Okay, the red button's on. Oh, it has been for 6 seconds. So that first 5 seconds was literally us just looking a little bit lost there. Hello everyone. Good evening. Thanks for joining us wherever you're joining us from. Obviously, this is going to be a good one this Monday. Not only because we've got what was quite a fun East Anglia. Well, it wasn't at the time, but ended up being quite a fun East Anglia derby. So we'll obviously cover that. We've got some end of season awards to go through. This is the last podcast of 2023 because next Monday is Christmas Day. Even I'm not weird enough to go on to host a podcast on Christmas Day. This will be the last one. We'll do some end of year awards. We'll wrap it all up. I'm going to say all this again when the pod goes live anyway. So see you after the intro. Oh yes, and Dan and Zoe are on. If you hadn't worked that bit out already. Okay, see you in a bit. Hello and welcome to On the Ball, the Norwich City podcast that has always, unequivocally, unashamedly been happy to celebrate a draw. Yes, we get to finish the year in podcasting in celebratory mood as Norwich City remain unbeaten for a 13th game against Ipswich Town. It was Jonny Rowe who etched his name into Norwich City folklore by getting a Portman Road double. No wonder he wanted to bring on the effing derby. Ipswich got two of their own, of course, one for every octogenarian their fans harangued before kickoff, leaving the spoils shared and both sets of supporters in agreement that it was a very fair result and that despite all the flares and stuff, they weren't all that fussed about winning anyway. We'll discuss McKenna's saltiness, whether Wagner might be onto something after all, maybe, and after 4 points from 6 since the last time we were on, asking if the playoff charge could be back on. Yes, that's right. I'm trying out optimism again. Plus, Shane Duffy as Judy Garland, your comments and questions and all the other unforgettable bits / forgettable bits that we've had to look up from the first 6 months in our 2023 end of year awards. I'm Steve Sanders, AKA at NCFCnumbers. And talking of lucky draws, we picked out two absolutely belting panelists from the Christmas raffle. They may have been the only ones available, but they're still good panelists, okay? First up, looking joyously festive in a Christmas jumper and Christmas hat combo. What with the Christmas jumper with Timu Pukki on, I should add, as a nice hark back to earlier in the year. It's Zoe Morgan. Zoe, are you okay? How are you feeling?
I am full of the joys of Christmas, Steve, and full of the joys of the derby.
Well, great, because I think those two things will come up quite prominently in the next hour or so. And who else would we want to round off 2023 in panelist world? But Dan Brigham. Dan, are you well?
I'm good. I'm good, thanks, Steve. Yeah, I am delighted to be here. A late call up for Ben Mounts. I'm not entirely sure whether Mounts was just appalled that we didn't get 3 points on Saturday, but he's had to pull out, and I'm afraid you're stuck with me.
He didn't look appalled on Saturday. He looked like I watched the game with him, and I think we agreed that we were quite happy with that point. We'll obviously get on to it, but I think we felt like that was a good point to have. Anyway, yes, thank you for stepping in at the last minute. Thank you for dropping Ben in as well, and very nice to have you on. Yes, so we'll obviously be talking derby first up, but please, as ever, give us your comments, give us your questions in the chat. Neil Luther's already kicked off with the annual question of blue Christmas lights. So I promise they're not blue. I'm going to have to invite people round, which I don't like doing, but it's got to the point where I can only say they are white. They just look blue on the screen. This will mean nothing to people listening in. But yeah, give us your end of year award shouts, and whether they are player of the year or game of the year or something completely ridiculous. We'll be doing a little bit of everything. So yeah, throw some of those in and we will read them out when we come to it later on. But obviously we've got something else to cover before then. So here's our headline act. Yep, we're going to start. Ewan, Leon McKenzie, Malky, Holty, Closer. We've been spoilt with a few derby heroes over the years, and you can add Jonny Rowe to that list. He scored a goal either side of half-time, which gave Norwich City a point in a 2-2 draw that extends our unbeaten run against Ipswich Town for another 4 months at least. Latest count, 5,356 days. It's a lot of days. Rowe was 5 years old the last time Ipswich Town won the derby. Zoe, I'll come to you first. I don't know whether this was an all-time derby classic, but it felt like watching it felt by far the most intense game of the season. And it was the outcome. Well, and the outcome felt good. I mean, I don't know whether that sums it up or whether you would agree with that.
The most intense game for years. It kind of feels like that we've had. I've been coming on this podcast for a couple of years now, and I genuinely don't think I've had anything better to talk about than drawing 2-2 against Ipswich. It feels like the best news we've had, which I know it's been slim pickings, but I know there's been a lot of discussion following the derby about how happy we're allowed to feel or otherwise, but for me it was just nice. It was nice to feel something again. It was a really intense game. It was something that we got excited about before it started. Again, that's been a while coming. And then it happened. It wasn't completely painful from start to finish, which a lot of derby matches are, even the ones that we do quite well in. I thought it was actually quite a decent game, especially throughout the whole sort of 90 minutes of, two very different halves. Really competitive. I think we'd all have taken a point before it started. And actually, I think people are very quick to say, well, you got to take a step back from it, and it shows the difference between the two clubs, blah, 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 blah. But I think we did know that before we started. We knew we were a long way behind them. We knew that we have been struggling for the past 18 months, however long. We know how well they've been doing. Like, all of that is not brand new news. The fact that we went there, we put up a fight, and we came away from it with a point, I think is new. Like, is news to us. Like, not many people would have given them much hope with that. So it is really pleasing, and to go away to a team so far ahead of us, to come out of it with a point, really good, and the absolute pleasure in extending that unbeaten run is really nice. Really, really nice.
Yeah, I think go back and listen to last week's podcast for the fatalism before kickoff, if anyone needs reminding of just how little we expected to get anything from this. Dan, we were trying to think of ways last week that we could, trying to find ways that we could get some kind of result here. I can't remember whether it was you or me that said it would be with a Marcelino Nunez long throw now, but I'm sure one of us did. Yeah, I mean, but how did you feel about the performance? Obviously, there was talk about it being undeserved, and Wagner said that he thought we did deserve it. But I mean, they dug in, right? And that's sometimes how you've got to get a point from these games.
Yeah, I mean, I felt very relieved afterwards. I think that was the biggest sense of emotion, and then kind of just found it very funny because Ipswich couldn't beat us when we came up from League One, couldn't beat us when they had all the millions coming in, couldn't beat us when they were worse than us, and couldn't beat us when they were kind of on the same level as us when in Farke's first season, and they still can't beat us when they are clearly currently a much better functioning outfit on the pitch. I mean, they were the better side in terms of creating chances, but we should have gone in at the break, a couple behind at least. But second half, they barely created anything. There was Gunn's excellent save right at the end, but that came from a really good shot. They went tearing us apart like they have a lot of teams this season. McCallum was excellent second half after a really dodgy first half as well against Wes Burns, who was the best player on the pitch in the first half as well. So yeah, you can choose to be a bit sort of correctly negative about it, that we didn't play particularly well in terms of getting forward. We barely created a chance and we were clinical and took it. Or you could just take the fact that after that sort of period of 2 months where we just didn't look like anything was clicking, didn't really look like we were digging in, that that is a group of players, and I know it's the derby, so they should act like this. There's a group of players playing for the manager, absolutely determined not to lose, with a bit of sprinkling of stardust in there as well in Jonny Rowe and Sarah and Sains. He was a little quiet, but still when he got on the ball, he looked, competitive. So I would say there's more to be taken, more encouraging stuff to be taken than the negative stuff from that. But it is clear that we've probably got a lot of work to do still if we want to get slightly more on even terms with Ipswich this season.
Yeah, and a few points to make up as well, as some of their fans have been pointing out in the last few days. I think, I suppose one player obviously that summed up the kind of, I think this Norwich City team over the last few games has kind of got the big moments right, and obviously no one's epitomised that more than Jonny Rowe, who hasn't played particularly well in either of the two games we had this week, and has scored 3 goals, and really crucial goals as well. He's just got a knack for being there and for taking his chances. And Zoe had, 10 league goals already, which, as I tweeted yesterday, it's only him and Jude Bellingham of the players in the top 2 leagues across the big 5 nations who are under 21 and have done that. You kind of forget he's 20 years old. And, with any luck, he'll still be here at the end of January. And if he can keep going like this, then who knows? But I mean, what a moment for him on Saturday to back up his comments as well.
Absolutely. And, and some of those comments around, what he tweeted in the grand scheme of things, saying, bring on the next match, is not exactly the most antagonistic thing anyone's ever said about Ipswich. You only needed to look at Darren Huckabee's Twitter timeline to see some slightly more goading tweets. But yeah, I mean, he is a man with a lot of confidence. You can tell that, he's really, and why wouldn't he have that confidence? And the really sort of clear thing, I suppose, from his first goal, particularly on Saturday, was that he's absolutely desperate to score. Like, he clearly has got a taste for it. He really wants to do more of it. He had 3 goes at that one, of flinging himself, which, like, first way forwards, then backwards, and then and then getting it in the net eventually. And he clearly really enjoys being that person that we're all celebrating. And some players really thrive off that. I think James Maddison is another one that absolutely not shying away from being the center of attention. And it's just really nice to have a player that is enjoying himself and doing so well. And the commentary on Saturday kept sort of saying, he's come out of nowhere, which is kind of true, but he was injured for a big chunk of last season. And I don't think any of us quite thought that he would burst onto the scene like this. But he's been obviously sort of knocking at the door when he's been fit for a little while now. And it's just a joy to watch him at the moment.
Yeah, he had 15 touches in that game. And
did he?
Yeah, and 2 of those touches were a goal, and another one was an overhead kick that led to the goal. But as Zoe sort of touched on there, what's really impressive of him is his absolute hunger to score. And not every footballer has that innately in strikers. I don't think someone like even Timu Pukki had that absolute hunger to throw himself into things. I don't think Adam Eder does it. I think he's been very good, Adam Eder, recently, but he hasn't got that sort of innate hunger that, say, a Grant Holt did. And the way he flung himself for that header that he missed, but then the cross was regurgitated and he scored from, just suggests there's a boy who just knows, just has that attacking instinct. I think that kind of players at the top level have, and it's no surprise to hear that a lot of the Premier League clubs are showing interest in him. And it also shows kind of how much he can develop as well. The fact he only had 15 touches in a difficult game where we didn't have a lot of the ball, obviously. He still managed to be in the right place and turn sort of half chances into full chances. That his second goal reminded me like a sort of a little bit like Nathan Redmond's at Wembley. That just sort of in the right place, just took his chance, didn't really even think about it, and buried it. Got a tiny bit of luck with the deflection, but it's a shot on target and it goes in. He's just got that sort of natural instinct, I think, and that's just very exciting to see. And it sounds like from what Nap has talked about, we don't have to sell in January, so fingers crossed.
which answered the question that James Beck has literally just asked: do you think we will sell Rowe? So let's call that a no, based on what we know from from what Ben Knapp has said. I mean, what I liked about the 2 goals, they weren't exactly pretty. I mean, the first actually was a really good finish, considering he was basically falling over as he was hitting it. But I thought obviously we're kind of naturally inclined to compare everything this team does to the Farke era, and I thought neither of those two goals would have ever been scored in the Farke era. Stacey hoiking that ball back into the box first time, just would never. You couldn't imagine Max Aarons ever doing that. And then obviously the second coming from a long throw, and Duffy just basically sort of thrusting himself towards the ball. And like you said, just kind of those instinctive finishes. Obviously that wasn't necessarily something that didn't happen in the Farke era, but just kind of hitting, just anywhere will do kind of finish for the second one and it going through the goalkeeper's legs. And I think I obviously take the point that we weren't at the level that Ipswich were. We were never going to be. But what we have seen them do over the last few weeks is take the opportunities that they've got. And I think there's something to be said for that in a team. Ultimately, yes, Ipswich did have better chances than us, but they didn't take them. Broadhead's miss in the first half was... I mean, I don't know about you guys. I thought that was a guaranteed goal when he sort of sold Stacey that dummy. So yeah, I mean, I think that is a quality of this team.
Yeah, yes, it is, and I guess you think in our run, what is it now? 4 wins in 7 and 2 draws. Yeah. And we've scored in all of those bar one, and yet we've still really, apart from Sheffield Wednesday second half, not really functioned properly as an attacking unit, and yet we're still getting goals and taking our chances, which... And the old cliche is if you're playing badly and still getting points, it means you're doing something right. I don't quite think we're at that stage yet, because you've also got to play well and get some points at some stage as well. But we certainly feel like we're in a healthier spot than we were 2 months ago. We've got some pretty tough fixtures coming up over the next 7 or 8 games, though. And as I'm still doubtful whether the Wagner, as much as I love him and as much as I really want it to work out for him, because he does seem like he really genuinely cares and works really hard, and the players seem to like playing for him. I'm still not certain he's the right guy to get top 6, which I think this squad, when fully fit, probably should be very much battling for that 5th and 6th spot.
Well, I would possibly argue that. Well, I feel like, although yes, we have been unconvincing at times during this run, I think we've covered that pretty extensively on this podcast. I do feel like they are at the moment trending in the right direction. And although some results have been fortunate, this is now over a 7-game spell, as well as Wagner's done points-wise in his entire tenure. And he is a very streaky manager. So, we could be talking about 4 defeats on the bounce coming up. But it does feel to me like we're slowly improving. Players are coming back. Zoe, am I right to feel optimistic? I feel like you're the better person.
You've come to the right person here, I think. I mean, it certainly what it feels like the last few games. Even though we've had some matches of dubious quality, I would say, is that the attitude seems to have sort of adjusted itself. Like there was, I think, when we reached that kind of real low point of the Blackburn home game, and the players looked like they were a bit shot, like they didn't really know what the plan was. They sort of looked really discombobulated, very confused. I think since then, and while there's been a bit of creaking around the edges, and while they try and reassemble, it does feel like they're pulling themselves together into a bit more of an organized plan. And I think it doesn't always work very well, and it's a bit ramshackle sometimes, but they do at least seem organized. They seem determined. They seem to know. They all seem to want the same thing. And I really think in the Championship that can go quite a long way when you've got a team playing for each other, really wanting by hook or by crook to not lose. And perhaps that run of defeats and really terrible results has at least sort of made them realize that that's not sustainable for anybody, especially people of their quality on paper. And I think some of those injured players just sort of starting to creep back into it. It was really nice to see Josh Sargent there on the pitch at the end on Saturday and celebrating. And I don't think he has to have been to every game, but he certainly seems to have been around a lot throughout his injury. And it's been good to see that he's carried on, sort of being there, supporting the team, and hopefully, for his reassimilation, is that a word? When he comes back into the team, it sort of is a bit more strict. He's been around, his it's a bit more smooth and streamlined, I suppose, then for everybody. But yeah, it feels like we're going awkwardly, sort of not perhaps in a straight line, but sort of ultimately in the right direction at the moment.
And I do feel actually that although, you know, there's lots that you can throw at Wagner for not having a plan B and for his tactics being slightly shonky at times, I think one of the problems with Dean Smith that we always referred back to was not having a clearly defined style of play. I think we do have that. And I also think the players do buy into it, you know, and whether that style of play is effective and whether we've got the right players for those roles, I'm not sure. Whether another manager could find a better style of play to suit these players, possibly also arguable. But I do think there are pros to Wagner, and that I don't know. I'm sort of in that camp where it certainly could be better at the moment, but it could also be worse. So I'm in all in at the moment to at least give him the next few weeks. When we come back in January, I'll be fully on the Wagner out bandwagon if it's turned again. But that's just the kind of fickle fan I am.
Someone's forgotten QPR and Preston very, very quickly, haven't they? I spent between hyperventilating and gipping during that match. I did think if we could have a Morsey or a Luongo along in our midfield, I'd whether it's sitting behind Sarah and Nunez or Sarah and Kenny, it's such a difference because, like against nearly every team good team we've played this season, we're absolutely dominated in midfield, and Sarah and Nunez ran their absolute socks off. We're good defensively, but that's not their role, and that's what, you know, it meant we just weren't we were pretty careless with the ball because there wasn't much of an outlet when they did finally get on the ball. So it's just like I'm with you that it's good to have a defined style of play and way of playing, but I'm just not convinced that we've maybe got the players. Maybe when it's very much our best 11, but when there's any injuries to it, I'm not entirely sure we've got the players to get the absolute best out of Wagner system, which is a bit ironic since we spent the last 2 transfer windows buying players for that system. So I don't know. We'll see in January. Maybe Napa will insist on bringing in a defensive midfielder, and we'll see what happens if that does happen. But yeah, I don't know. I still think. I think I've got a little bit of hope that we'll get top 6. I think a lot's got to go right if we stick with Wagner, though.
Well, if Napa's been listening to the On the Ball Vault, which presumably is part of his research role, he will have been. The first 2 things he'll be doing are getting a defensive midfielder in and getting rid of the wingers, because that's or at least a couple of them, because I'll just say on repeat.
It's the On the Ball Vault where Michaelbailey was locked in at the AGM. By the club.
That's a separate vault that we own that we're keeping him in. A bit Fritzl for some reason. Right. Let's talk Ipswich, shall we? I mean, just briefly. Dan, did anyone kind of? Or you mentioned Wes Burns. Did anyone catch your eye in a good way or in a I don't really like them very much sort of way. I mean,
all of them. To obviously the second. I mean, Broadhead was excellent. It's really the first time I've seen him play properly. I thought his movement was very clever. God bless him for missing a couple of sitters. Very much appreciate that. But he was excellent. And Morsey and Luongo, I think, were just very good in that system. Leif Davis had a quiet game, I thought, which was. And as he's been one of the standout players in the Championship this season, I think that is testament to our defensive performance as well. And that's probably enough talking about Ipswich players, isn't it?
Zoe's pulling a face like she's not got anything.
I'm not interested. I'm not interested in this conversation. I'm just thinking about that one that basically assaulted Stacey right towards the end as well. I've got him earmarked for the return at Carrow Road for some good booze.
I don't even remember. I remember. Was it Wolfenden who had a bit of a ding dong with Onel as we entered the final couple of minutes? I mean, it was nice for Onel to get on and just have a bit of a scrap, which I think was the role that he had to play on Saturday.
Harry Clark seems like a man who would quite happily be locked in a cupboard. I think he seems.
With
I'm sure
Michael.
He's a fan favourite.
Not sure whether Michael would come out alive. Yes, he. I think I don't. Well, I don't know who the one who assaulted Stacey was, but
Who was that? Burns? It might have been Burns.
Yeah, I can't remember. He sort of went elbow first when he was.
He absolutely clattered him.
Yeah, I mean, Burns has got a slightly annoying man bun, so
yeah.
Let's
and as we mentioned, Stacey, I thought after some really bad performances over the last couple of months, I thought a second half, particularly, he was really, really solid defensively, won all his headers, which again was encouraging because he started the season so well and has dropped off massively. So it's good to see him return to form.
Yeah, and some great winking at the side of the pitch as well when we scored, which again probably why he was there.
Oh, Nell, yes,
yeah.
It's a rite of Derby passage, that really. So he's carrying on the Farker legacy. And yeah, as you said, Dan, McCallum in the second half was really good. Probably you mentioned the Angus Gunn save as well, and I think it's making a big difference having him.
Oh,
back
and Kenny was good at centre back against
we
the highest scorers in the league. He was. We all wondered whether he'd done well against some lower table sides, and he's proved he did well. He had some great interceptions. Read it really well. I don't remember really him coming under any real pressure apart from a couple of set pieces, but again, he's always in the mix for set pieces anyway. I thought he was excellent.
Yeah, Julian Scott is asking if Kenny is now our best defender. I mean, I think there are genuine questions, like, because Gibson will be back fit soon. Hanley is already in action for the under 21s or the youth team, whatever they're called these days. But I mean, there is a genuine point, unless things go south in the next couple of weeks, that Kenny keeps his place. I mean,
is it his best shot for a Euros place as well? If he's suddenly reborn as a central, could get selected ahead of Hanley. That could be an interesting.
Or alongside.
Oh my goodness!
There was a moment after we scored the first goal, after the players were sort of breaking up from the celebration, where Kenny had an absolutely enormous grin on his face, and I realised we don't really see him smiling that often. It was quite eerie. His teeth are absolutely resplendent, but he's not a big smiler, but it was nice to see him smiling.
I really enjoyed the tender moment that he had with Borja Sainz after the goal against Sheffield Wednesday as well, where I don't know what he was saying in his ear. He was whispering sweet nothings or something, but they had a long embrace, and Kenny was definitely saying something. So maybe he's not a smiler. He's just an embracer. Yes, I think that kind of covers most of it. I'll just flag up a couple of comments based on the game. Jeff Mann 98 says that Williams covered a lot of the bench. Didn't see him at all. It was a complete sideshow, really, wasn't he? Like, didn't do a thing.
He looked very sad on the bench at full time as well.
Yeah.
What a shame. Paul Solahub says 6 prime ministers since Ipswich won the derby, which is nice.
Not many good ones either.
No, and could be 7 if we can get through April unscathed. And on the Rowe point, Mr. Bish, this is a good point, which I've never actually considered, but genuinely surprised that Rowe didn't get a chance at central striker when Sargent and Barnes were both out. Pace and finishing ability seems like he would be a natural. I mean, everybody else got a go, so actually, slightly surprised that he didn't get a shot. So we'll move it on to things we're not going to talk about. We'll do our awards in a moment, but we have to talk about Shane Duffy, don't we? Who had a great game, as we haven't even talked about him yet. Had a great game on Saturday, and seemingly a great night on Saturday as well. It was in London, I think,
accompanied by our kit man.
Was it actually our kit man?
Yes, that was one of our kit men. Yeah, who was in every photo looking.
Like he's trying not to watch.
Yeah, but with a massive grin on his face, just watching Shane Duffy with absolute relish. Maybe he was just there to change Duffy's outfit in case he needed to.
Do they just send the kit man out with Shane Duffy to make sure he doesn't get up to any mischief?
Because it wasn't doing a good
do his job then, did he?
if Shane Duffy's sleeping in his car now, does that do much for his physical ability ahead of the game on Saturday as well? If he's sort of got a bad back, and yes.
I mean, as long as he can still just stick his head on things, I think, which it seems he can do.
That's what got him into trouble, isn't it?
I mean, I like the idea that there's a Norwich players dressed as the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and the Lion out there somewhere in London as well, who are not photographed. He's just given them the slip.
Well, I see Kenny's taken his family to the same place there today, which whether he's just gone to show them where Shane Duffy was pictured by a paparazzi just last night, I don't know, but yeah, just recreating the memories.
Yeah, it's going to be like that photo in Manchester of the Arndale Centre where they're just people sprawled all over the floor.
Yeah.
It's going to be like a landmark. This is where Duffy was dressed as Dorothy, and the Kit Man was there as well. Just to add to it. Yeah, long time since I've had a night out, anything like that, unfortunately. But that's a separate story.
Do you think it would be we've got to assume that the rest of the players were there as well, right? But because if it was Shane Duffy dressed as Dorothy and the Kit Man dressed as Willy Wonka, and that was it was just those two on a night out, that would be quite weird.
Well, it was in London, which I mean, either the players don't rate either Ipswich or Norwich as a good night out, or Duffy's just headed out there on his. I mean, I can't believe that they would have all gone to London. I mean,
well, it was Winter Wonderland, and I think a lot of clubs go to Winter Wonderland for their Christmas party because they think that that the Paps won't be there, and maybe the other clubs had some sort of emergency procedures put in place where they weren't photographed, but Shane Duffy is too modest to ever think anyone might want to take his photo.
Or maybe Duffy was the sacrificial lamb, and they were just like, if you go out there dressed as Dorothy and start kissing someone who may or may not be your girlfriend, who allegedly may or may not be your girlfriend, then that's it. No one else will that'll overshadow anything else that might happen on the night out, and it worked. So, were there any Winter Wonderland nights out while you were at the club? Then, Dan, was there any Christmas parties there?
Yeah, there was, but I certainly didn't go to them.
Okay.
I'd only dress up as Dorothy in the privacy of my own home.
Yeah, for those listening, that is exactly what Dan is dressed up as right now. Okay, we won't come to you as our gossip correspondent then in that case. And then, I mean, the only other thing that I was going to bring up was the Coleman's Mustard campaign, just because it was all that there seemingly was to talk about before the derby, and the yellow and red scarves, which didn't look quite as tragic as I thought they might do, but it was still. It's all slightly odd as a marketing campaign.
Yeah, it has got into one of my awards that we'll be going through later.
Okay,
yeah.
Well, we'll save it for then. In that case, I mean, if
I suppose if it does feel odd, why were Coleman's concentrating all of this marketing budget in a city where where Coleman's is probably consumed more than any other city, or where people are aware of Coleman's more than any other city in the country?
Yeah, I mean. Search me. I feel like we've not done our job by not having Coleman scarves adorning the entire background.
Until we see some money from it, we can't just go,
That's
doing
true.
it for free.
Are we the only Norwich City podcast not sponsored by Coleman's right now?
I think
Michaeljbailey's taken his eye off the ball. I tell you.
Well, if he needs something to do while he's stuck in that cupboard, then he can get onto the PR people, marketing team at Coleman's. I mean, we've just mentioned them about 10 times, so if anyone from Coleman's is listening, then at least send us a couple of jars or something. That will probably do for things we're not going to talk about, because we have a lot of end of year awards to talk about. It is December. It is our last podcast of the year. So but I mean, let's get stuck into some of the traditional ones. I mean, game of the year, Zoe, yours, I think we already know. Unless you had another. I mean, I would completely concur that nothing for me beats that feeling from Saturday all year. Like, that was the best feeling of the year.
It was the best all-round feeling of remembering what it's like to really care about what's happening in the football, the build-up the week before, the tension during the game itself, the absolute feeling of relief and happiness at the end of it. In that way, if we'd have lost, I would not be saying this, but in that way, it is good to have the derby back. It is good to have that fixture in the calendar. It's been a while, so it's nice to have it back. There's been other games I've probably enjoyed more in terms of just being quite relaxed and happy. Not many, but yeah, that one was probably the nicest football feeling, I would say.
Dan?
I hate the derby and everything about it. Hate the build-up. Only like it when we've actually finally won, or at least 3 goals ahead with 10 minutes to go, and I can be slightly confident we are going to win. I'm just too much of a wuss to enjoy it, I think. So I think probably game of the year was the 4-0 win at Preston, when Wagner had recently... Was it Preston or Huddersfield? No, Preston last season, yeah. When... Wagner had just come in and it suddenly felt like we'd got our team back, playing really good attacking football, smashing in the goals, going up the Football League, etc., etc. And it did feel genuinely like a bit of a release, and one of the first sort of feelings like that since we'd all come back to the football since the pandemic as well. So although obviously it wasn't really a marker of things to come, unfortunately. Just for 90 minutes of football, that was really enjoyable.
Yeah, Kenny shouting, "This is what we do," when celebrating one of the goals. It's like, we're back.
I think I heard him say that after the 0-0 with Preston as well. I think this is what we do.
Maybe he's only saving it for Preston games. Yeah. You know, there's someone in the Preston team or in the stands who don't know what we do at any given moment. And of course Kieran Dowell starring in that. Well, I mean, now that you say it, I didn't enjoy the derby particularly either, but I think that it just encapsulates everything about being a football fan for me, other than the obvious misery that you get at the end. There wasn't that this time around, but I didn't enjoy the feeling at the end of a game anywhere near as much as I did at the end of that game in any other game this year. So I think that would be it for me, but I can also see why a draw being the best game of the year, even in this year of slim pickings, feels slightly defeatist. Declan Cotter has jumped straight onto worst game of the year, which he's nominated the 6-2 against Plymouth. I mean, no arguments, but we've had some bad ones.
There was, well, I sort of went for a lowest ebb award.
Okay.
It definitely had many contenders. I would say the Plymouth game definitely up there. The Blackburn game, that's the first, I think I mentioned on the podcast at the time. I think that's the only time we've ever scored and I've not stood up. I felt like that felt like a real low ebb. Also highly commended for me on that one would be Norwich 0, Swansea 3, when they made 942 passes and Russell Martin was giving it the big I am on the pitch afterwards.
Yeah, look forward to 942 passes on New Year's Day when Russell Martin turns up again. That'll be a nice way to start off 2024, won't it? Dan, have you got any lower ebbs than that?
Well, there's several Blackburn ones to choose from, isn't there, from this year? Couple of Middlesbrough was the year before, actually. But yeah, you can't go in any further than the 6-2 defeat to a promoted side. I met someone I think it was Adam Brandon on Twitter, who said, like, whatever happened, like, you just cannot trust this team now, or this management team, when you've lost 6-2 at Plymouth. And I kind of get what he meant by that. I know, like, we obviously got hammered when we came third in the Premier League by Blackburn, but we were hammered by a promotion rival, a title rival. Then this time we were beaten by a team who were in League One the season before, 6-2. So yeah, I mean, luckily I didn't watch a minute of that or listen to a minute of that. But yeah, that's one of our worst defeats in my lifetime watching the football, I think.
Wow. I mean, obviously, I do implicitly trust this team now, as I've already established. I'm well back on board. The Middlesbrough 5-1 was actually this year, so let's chalk that one up as another low ebb. But we're back on the up and up now. Best player of the year. Dan, I'll come to you first on that.
Probably Sarah, but with a very honourable mention to Kenny, which again I think just because of the amount of work they've had to do in midfield, in 2023. The amount of kilometers they must have run in 2023. I think Sarah's is just an outstanding player, an absolute joy to watch. Can only get better, and hopefully it's just here. And hopefully 2024 he's at Norwich and powering us to promotion.
And Zoe, any disagreement with that?
No disagreement here. Imagine Sarah in a team where he didn't have to do absolutely everything as well. Like, it's just sensational. Yeah, he's so good. And a small honourable mention. I'm sure we'll get onto him for other things, but Jonny Rowe as well for this season specifically.
Yeah, I think those are your top three, and probably, I mean, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, but in terms of Player of the Season award, those three at the moment would be lock-ins, but long way to go. Have either of you got a favourite goal from this year, whether a high quality number or just one that you found particularly enjoyable? I mean, I would open the bidding with Marcelino Nunez against Birmingham, just for the kind of wow factor that it produced, like Alex Tetty versus Sunderland, but with genuine technique rather than just kind of like, I'm going to throw my leg at this and see what happens. That was probably my favourite goal that I saw in person anyway, I think.
Yeah, and it's a shame Michaelbailey isn't here, because I remember we had some big arguments with him about whether Gabby Sarah's goal, I think, against Millwall was better.
I think he was shocked that anyone could consider Nunez.
Absolutely outraged. I'm still going with Nunez, but that Sarah's goal as well was a special one. I also a sort of mention for his goal against Leeds, which I thought was just really like an excellent technical goal. Coming through a crowd of players in the penalty area, and the feeling of going 2-0 up at home against Leeds was, again, one of those rare times when you felt something over the course of the last year. Obviously, almost immediately those feelings were ripped away from us. But it was that was a good goal.
Yeah, definitely felt something at the end of that game, just a very different emotions. Sorry, Dan.
Nunez. I would also mention to Barnes's goal against Sheffield Wednesday last week for the team move. And we haven't had many great team goals, not that I remember anyway, this year. And obviously Sarah is massively influential in that, with a quick give and go and then a wonderful pass through as well. There've been a few own goals, I think, which have been relatively memorable, and we've scored a lot of headers, and we've not been able to say that for a long time, not since Lambert's era, anyway. So we've been better in the air this season. But yeah, I think Nunez does take it, though, because it's just a hell of a strike, and I'm enjoying him trying to replicate that pretty much every time he plays for Norwich now. Sometimes air kicks it, and sometimes looks like it's on target and just gets blocked by someone's face.
Well, he had one, didn't he, on Saturday, which looked like it was on target. Whether it had gone in or not, I don't know.
He was chuckling to himself after that as well, wasn't he? Just having a real big smile about it. It's like, yeah, look what I can do. Michaeljbailey wasn't a fluke.
Maybe he had Kenny behind him saying, "This is what we do. We do."
This is what you do specifically. Yeah.
Also, the long throws. Where did
we haven't
that come from? We've not touched on this. Do you think he knew he could do that before it happened the other day?
Well, I certainly didn't. Ben and I were saying, did you know Nunez could take a long throw? No, I didn't. Did you? And then, of course, he held it in. And, I mean, it worked. So therefore, he has a long throw, right? Is that how it works?
Maybe it's like in the US office where I can't remember his name. What's the big lad in the US office?
Kevin
isn't allowed to play basketball. And at the end, he's just chucking it in and in when no one's watching. Maybe Nunez was just never asked if he could do a long throw, but someone just spotted him at the end of training, just absolutely launching it into the penalty area.
I reckon we tried it after conceding in the Sheffield Wednesday game from one, and just kind of like, well, it works for them. That's got to be up with the worst goals conceded of the year, I think, especially after Duffy sort of shanked it out of play to give it away in the first instance.
Good fun. Yeah.
Just a quick shout out as well for Sarah versus Southampton, which was a lovely goal earlier in the season in the away game. So I think we've basically established that if we're going to score a good goal, either Gabriel Sarah will need to be involved, or it'll just be a Nunes howitzer. I mean, that's covered the sort of general one. So any more esoteric awards that you had? Dan, you had loads, so let's have.
Well, I believe Zoe does as well. So
okay, well, go on then, Zoe.
Okay,
so
well,
take it in turns, maybe.
Yes, a starter for 10. My Feel Like Pure S Just Want Him Back award goes to Daniel Farke's return in the Leeds game and all of the emotions that brought.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Feel Like Pure S Just Want Him Back as well for some of the players who left in the summer. Just slight pangs of regret. I'm just going to pause momentarily because speaking of awards, we have. I mean, he's probably an award-winning journalist. But he's joining the chat belatedly. He's giving us a wave, so I'm going to invite him onto the podcast right now. I mean, you can probably guess
Christmas.
It's the ghost of Christmas past. Actually, it's Michael Hello, Michael. Good evening. What a nice surprise! We've never done this. We've never done this before. A man who said there was zero chance of him being on the podcast. This is a genuine surprise. Are you stuck? Can you?
Yes, I'm stuck. No, I'm not.
Fantastic. Hello.
Hello,
We've done
Bailey.
Ipswich. I mean, obviously, you've been presumably tuning in and listening to this whole thing.
I had it on in the background. Yeah.
Of course. And we've moved on to our end of season awards. So I guess have you anyone that you want to nominate, and anything that you want to nominate anyone for?
No.
Well, thanks for coming, and Merry Christmas.
It's been lovely listening to you all. It's been much fun. It was great. It was, well, yes, great result at the weekend and all that. Lovely.
I like how you're coming on and speaking like you've never seen a football match before.
I know.
Good result for the boys.
Exactly. It does feel a bit like that. But yes. Exactly.
Have you got any quick summation of the Saturday's game that you wanted to run past us?
Well, it was a weird experience. I've been like writing pretty much since the game, so I'm in a bit of a funk. But I have actually finished writing just about the derby in general, which was quite weird, having been exposed to the derby for so long. It was quite strange to kind of write about the essence of the derby and what makes it the derby for like a wider audience. So that's been fun. But I thought Ipswich probably should have been a few goals ahead at half time, and then Norwich dug in very well. Jonny Rowe walked the walk after his little talk, which is exciting. I mean, it was funny. Being in the press box at full time, there was basically loads of cheering on the far side, obviously from the Norwich fans, and then sort of a chuckle from everyone else that sort of laughing at the reaction, because I guess they didn't really know what to do because that wasn't how it was supposed to go. So, and yeah, nice. There's a bit of spirit and resilience, which is nice to see, isn't it? And a couple of players maybe coming back, and Borja Sainz looking like he can run with the ball in a direction and use one of his feet. So, it sort of bodes well. Josh Sargent coming back I'm right on board with I don't know what points train we're on at this point, but I know you're on it, Steve.
Yeah, I think it depends who you ask, to be honest.
Right behind you. But yeah, I think, that's all right, isn't it? Ipswich were I found them a little bit disappointing. They've been so good and they're so well coached, yet it seemed that because they were profligate with their chances, that was sort of the difference between how they would normally play and how they played on Saturday. And then I don't know how sustainable that is if you if you do botch your chances and maybe get the odd injury. So that will be interesting to see how it all plays out. But
as you were writing a reportage piece, Michael, for the derby, did you get any scraps to really get to the essence of the derby?
I almost got in a couple of scraps. I think that was loitering around the stadium, and
I ended up.
By some Norwich fans. So basically, I was by the Cobalt stand for a bit. I was in the Ipswich welcome, which was just by the press entrance, really, so you could kind of double up, watching all that going through. I mean, all I'll say is, it's obviously not great to be banging on the doors of 2 80-year-olds in a car. But also, if the Norwich team coach had the sense to go around the other side, someone probably should have told whoever was driving Delia and Michael that it might not be the best way to go either. So I was ending up sort of along the Cobalt stand, and there was just hundreds of Ipswich fans one side, and then these dribs and drabs of Norwich fans, because they obviously make sure that they come in a sort of staggered way, and then this no man's land in between. And every so often a Norwich fan would come and go, "Hello, Michael," and I'm sort of standing up sort of on a hill between the two, sort of go, yes, and trying to sort of speak, but not end up then standing back up and just getting a load of abuse from however many hundred Ipswich fans there were to my right. I'm just a coward, really. That's what we've all ascertained here. But it was quite a unique perspective. I've not really, been in those positions for the derby before. But it's all fun. No one really seemed to get hurt, so that was good.
Take any pyros with you?
No, just saw one fly over my head and a beer can. Lots of children producing gestures.
Fly over your head.
Have known. Yeah,
were they aiming for you? Or?
Well, who knows?
Have you seen the clip of Ashley Barnes? There's obviously a pie being thrown at him, and he turns to the pie and sticks his gob open as if he's trying to eat it. I think after we've either scored our first or second goal.
This is what Ashley Barnes does, and I know you put out the difference in the record between when Ashley Barnes plays and doesn't play, Steve. So,
yeah,
he's the talisman.
He can eat all the pies he wants, as far as I'm
One of us in this podcast keeps referring to him as a bollard as well, which, given his points per game, seems a bit harsh, doesn't it?
Well, I know it's not me, so I guess it must be the Athletics' Michael Bailey.
How dare you?
How rude!
As long as the ball bounces off in a useful direction, then you can be a bollard. Can't you?
Certainly bounced off him in a useful direction for Ipswich on Saturday, didn't it?
Well, in fairness, and you guys know this because I put it in the WhatsApp group. I was halfway through writing the sentence. Jonny Rowe was giving it the big one, but he's barely been involved, and then he literally scored. I mean, the guy had done nothing apart from give the ball away, I think, pretty much up until the point where he scored, and now he's a hero. So isn't football wonderful?
Yes, I don't think we can speak ill of Jonny Rowe on this podcast. And also, I don't think we're allowed to be disappointed in Ipswich on this podcast either. They are either pleasingly terrible or annoyingly good, I think. And they weren't really either, actually, on Saturday. Where were we? We were doing some awards, Michael, before
Sorry, no. You would never have let me out of the cupboard, Steve. I was perfectly fine, and then
Well, we don't know whether you're not still in there. But Zoe, did you have any more honorary mentions?
Well, I was about to say Michael is the winner of one of my other awards.
That's not why I'm here. I did not know this.
The Notable Absence Award for people it's not quite the same without. Michael Bailey has won that, but just ahead of Josh Sargent and Grant Hanley.
Yeah, and Tamu Pukki must be in the running for that as well.
Yeah. And all of the 18-19 squad.
and Wes Houlihan.
Yeah,
and Holty.
Yeah, Michael, you've beaten some stiff competition here.
Yeah. Let's not put that one up to a vote, please.
I've got the Todd Cantwell Fashion Icon of the Year goes to Alan Russell, who of course was our manager at the start of the year, lest we forget. Do we know what he's doing now?
He did pop up. He was coaching Ivan Toney, because obviously he isn't playing any football at the moment. So, and I think he was over in the States for a bit as well. So I think his partner's had a baby. It's really, social media is great. You don't, you just follow stuff and they tell you everything that's happening to them. So I think his partner's had a child. So I think he's become a daddy. I don't know if that's for how many times that is that he is now a daddy, but he's a new daddy. So yeah, loads. There you go.
That was a much more thorough update than I was expecting. Thank you.
You're glad you're asked now, aren't you? Yeah.
That's why we've your absence has been so keenly missed. You see, Michael. Dan, did you have any more awards?
Just so the football was better in the old days. Award goes to the match where the PA didn't work at Carrow Road. I can't remember which game it was though, but it was quite nice to have a build up and just hearing the crowd get louder and louder on its own. And in a similar vein, in tribute to our home form in 2023, which is 9 wins, 11 losses and 2 draws. the Misappropriate Song Award of the year goes to Welcome to the Jungle, which we run out to before every home game, which does seem a bit unnecessary, I think. A couple of others as well, if you want me to keep going.
Keep going.
Best Song Award. It's got to be the Rowe chant, but closely followed by the crowd serenading the referee against Sheffield Wednesday when he went down the tunnel with "You've Had an S" when he came back on, which I very much enjoyed.
Yeah.
And I'm only not swearing because teachers joined this podcast.
Yeah, we need to behave now. In other fan interaction, my best post-match fan interaction of the year goes to Andy Hughes at the Hawthorns. I'm hoping we see that resurrected on Boxing Day when we travel there. And also best comeback of the year to the fan who, when Somerville celebrated by shushing the crowd, said, "We're already quiet." Very much enjoyed that.
I did have that one as well. Yeah. If we talk about quotes as well, quote of the year is "I'd never move on because there's, without being rude, a few divorcees in the snake pit." In a year of very memorable lines from our former sporting director, I think that one probably tops them.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Although Todd claiming that Bayern Munich were after him has to be that's got to be up there in terms of quotes. It was Todd Bayern Munich.
And I don't want to be controversial because I know, Michael, you loved this, but in the sales team bullying the marketing team into something insane award, just beating off the Coleman scarves is someone deciding that an American PA announcer for the entirety of a match due to Tampa time day was a good idea. Could only have been a salesperson who's promised the absolute world to Tampa, and some poor marketing person in that team have had to enact it.
That game.
I know you were a fan.
That game also won my "We Deserve Everything That's Coming to Us" award.
And we got it.
He was a lovely guy.
I've also got a "You OK, Hun" award for Todd Cantwell.
just generally, no specific incident.
Just generally.
Just generally.
Although he's won a trophy this week.
He has indeed.
And scored a Champions League goal as well, didn't he? Although it was in the qualifiers and therefore didn't count, but he did say it was a Champions League goal. So.
I feel like all of these awards should be asterisk in Scotland. That's
we another one. We pay our money for this award, sponsored by NCFC Numbers, because this was using one of your stats that I remembered. When Norwich went 5 games without a goal at home for the first time in 103 years.
Yeah, that wasn't even our lowest ever award either. That's in the feature. How did that not come up at that point? My saddest looking pundit of the year goes to Ben Gibson at Middlesbrough, who presumably thought it was a good idea to step in when he was injured against his old club, and looked like he bitterly regretted that by the end. And of course, best prize of the year goes to Norwich City offering up the hot dog for hitting the crossbar. Wonderful stuff. Anything else?
I suppose just a positive one, I guess, and this "We Are a Great Club Really" award goes to the mental health video, which was a superb piece of work. And a very important piece of work.
Well, that feels like an apt moment to end it. I had a couple more snide ones, but I'm going to leave them.
Oh, go on! No, it's too late. You might as well say them now, Steve. Go on.
Well,
yes.
My false messiah of the year was Isaac Hayden with Marquinhos as runner-up, and the he can't play there award of the year, Liam Gibbs up front, and then this is particularly snide, George Long in goal. So I'm sorry, George.
Wow.
Yeah, I see. Now I feel bad. You made me do it. You made me do it, Michael. Right. Well, we're pushing the hour mark, and we've still got to do a little bit of talk about what's coming up over the festive period. So I'll cue up Motty.
This is almost fantasy football.
Yeah, I don't know if you know how this works, Michael, but this is the bit where we enter we look forward, and the period we're entering now is the busy festive one, as they call it. So we start with Huddersfield at home on Saturday against former West Brom manager Darren Moore, and then it's West Brom away on Boxing Day against former Huddersfield manager Carlos Corberán, confusingly. A friendly trip to Millwall awaits on the 29th before, as we've already said, Russell Martin will return on New Year's Day with Southampton. So let's do 10 minutes on each of these, please. No, Zoe, I'll come
later.
to you.
Yeah, I'm off.
Yeah.
No.
Zoe, I'll come to you first. That's 4 games. What would be a good return from those 4?
Well, obviously winning them all.
Sure.
Looking at now.
What would be a realistically good return?
Well, I think we've got to start by winning. I think we've got to back up that good feeling from the derby, however you might want to position it as a good feeling, with a win on Saturday. I think that's a real must-win game, really, especially given our home form in 2023. And our record against Huddersfield seems pretty decent. So, yeah, I think we've got to win that. I think, obviously, you've got to assume that the Southampton game is going to be a difficult one. I would say if we could get 7 points from those 4 games, I would be happy.
You think?
Michael, very much pricking the balloon of optimism that we've tried to get going. No. Well, I'm glad
it's someone else with the pinprick this time.
Just not me assuming that we're not going to win every game is very difficult for me. So I hope it's quite tough for me to try and be even slightly realistic. I hope you understand.
I think that was a good balance in amongst all the cynicism. But we go on, Dan, sorry.
I've just done 30 seconds of looking at our fixtures, and 5 of our next 7 games are against the top 6 teams in the top 6. So Southampton, Leeds, West Brom twice, and Hull City. So it's a pretty big 2 weeks coming up, 2 or 3 weeks coming up. And obviously Josh Sargent's not back yet. And I guess going back to what we were talking about earlier, whether this run that we're putting together, whether the results are more impressive than the performance, I think that's really going to be put to the test. If Wagner can somehow get us, through these next 7 games with the same points return as we've had over the last 7 games, seems unlikely at this stage because of the strength of the opposition we're facing. But if we do carry on this form, then suddenly we will inevitably find ourselves in a really good position going into the sort of final stretch of the season.
Yeah, and with I suppose, as you say, a tricky run of games kind of behind us, and I guess theoretically some easier ones after that. That's how it works, right? Hanley back in action, Hwang's back in a week. I mean, obviously these players will presumably be eased back in. Sargent looks like after the festive period, hopefully he'll be good to return. So suddenly we do have a bit more depth. Michael, do you at 7 points,
yes,
seemingly the best that we can do. But I don't know. It does feel like with these players coming back that the squad is more like what you would hope a playoff chasing squad would look like.
Yeah, definitely. I think Josh Sargent has the ability to make a big difference. I struggle to think of the team not getting found out against Southampton and Leeds again. It's interesting playing West Brom so close together twice, I must admit, and they are a strong side, but they do have slight vulnerabilities there. They've got the potential to chase down the fringes of the playoff pack. There's a bit of weakness in the Championship, I think. So there is that there. I just can't trust them, and it's the derby was encouraging in a lot of ways, but they also did not really threaten at all in the second half, and it was very much a let's close up for a bit, which is something that they've done in the past. So I think there's potential there, and that's exciting, and I think that's probably all anyone wants at the moment. So I think averaging a averaging what was I thinking? More like 1.5 per game. Is that the actual thing over Christmas? It would be quite good. What's that? How many games? 4 games. So what's that?
Yeah.
6 points.
Two wins,
Okay,
2 defeats.
even I've overdated that. I was so damning of 7, and I've come up with 6. So I don't know how that actually works out, but I think everyone has to appreciate there's going to be a kind of a season of a couple of good results, and maybe then the bad ones thrown in, and it's classic unpredictable championship fodder, and see if that's enough to take you above a few teams and challenge as late into the season as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think we said it when Wagner was appointed that he is a streaky manager, right? And that seems to be exactly where we are. We win a few, we lose a few. I mean, James Beck has maybe summed up in a few words what we've taken an hour and 5 minutes to say. 1 game at a time, we are bad, but we keep winning. So we'll take that, bad performances and wins. But I completely agree with what you said, Zoe. I think Saturday kind of feels key because it's exactly the sort of game that could just kill all the optimism if we play badly and fail to win. But hopefully not. And hopefully that'll take us nicely into the Christmas period.
I am. I think you're now going anyway, but I was going to say I'm now going to go. Just gonna go.
I mean,
I've got to crack on. But what I was going to say is, this is the most esoteric appearance on any podcast in the world. So I'm sorry. I feel like I've just.
It's been a genuine pleasure, Michael.
We are very kind. I am going to the Huddersfield game with my friends who are over from Perth, Australia. Now, the last time they were over from Perth, Australia, I took them to the football, and they got to watch Norwich at home to Luton, which was a 1-0 home defeat. And I think Glenn Roeder was manager. It was horrendous, and they didn't see a goal. So we're all going to the Huddersfield game. Now, 4-0. Win, obviously. Let's hope there's a goal. Please hope that the Norwich score, and then everything will be great. And if it's a 1-0 defeat, I am blaming them.
I mean, I'm surprised they wanted to go back after a game in the Roeder era in which we didn't score. I can't imagine that would have. Mind you, it has been 15 years, so perhaps they've the scarring has just healed itself in the meantime.
Maybe.
Right. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Michael. It's been like, on Christmas Day when you've got that final present that you don't expect your parents to get you. They've just brought it out, and it's exactly what we always wanted. It was a little cameo appearance from our
I really do not think that's quite how this has panned out. But can I just say, it's been lovely to share this screen and the microphones with you for these 5 minutes. And what a brilliant job you've been doing to keep the whole thing going while I just swan off in a cupboard. So keep up the great work. And I hope that Norwich City rewards you with all the points you could wish to receive.
7.
Yeah,
7 points. Yeah,
6 is good.
Yeah.
6 is good.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, Michael, and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Good luck getting out of the cupboard, and we will see you soon.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. I mean, that's literally, you know that person who at a party leaves before the end so that everybody can say goodbye to them when they, just for that moment where they can get to make an exit. That's what that was, because we are pretty much done anyway. Unless
he's not the man for an Irish exit, is he, Michael? He's not going to suddenly disappear without saying bye.
No, very much wants you to know when he's gone. I mean, have we got any other business before we wrap this up?
Don't think so.
I feel shocked after Michael Bailey's appearance.
How would you feel if he actually was a present on Christmas Day? If you were just unwrapping and kind of an oblong shaped present, and it was Michael.
I mean, I think of all the people who I could unwrap under my tree, he'd probably be in the ones I'd rather unwrap. What would I do with him would I just get to own him then?
Get to keep him. Like a puppy.
I could get him to appear at various points of the podcast whenever I wanted him to.
He'd just be sat next to you the whole time.
No, I absolutely couldn't. No. Could you come on for all of it next time? No. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I'd want it done. I don't think I would. I haven't got enough wrapping paper either. So.
Cross that one off the list.
Yeah, we'll save that set piece for 2024, shall we? Yeah,
we've not talked about the big FA Cup tie, have we?
We have not. No, you're absolutely right. It's Bristol Rovers for anyone who doesn't know, but that also does care. In fact, that will probably be when we next return. So we'll do a deep dive into
why we never win in the FA Cup.
That's why we never win in the FA Cup. Yeah, I mean, I think the concerns about the second string might come to fruition, but it could be Josh Sargent's glorious comeback game, of course. So
we've also not mentioned Abu Kamara scoring a couple of goals for Portsmouth the other day, and seems to be doing really well there, which is good to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think he looked like he could probably do with a loan at the end of last season, so hopefully he'll come back. We've had it before with a few players, haven't we, who have come back after a successful loan spell and looked completely transformed.
Like maybe he's had what Adam Eder could have done with 2, 3, 4 years ago. Now,
yeah.
But, one of my best mates is a Portsmouth fan, and Kamara is apparently after they had a few doubts about him to start with, he's now a firm fan favourite.
Okay, just like Ashley Barnes. That's a nice parallel. One for our loans manager. We've got an ex-loans manager now as sporting director, haven't we? So I'm sure they'll be expertly keeping an eye on Abu Kamara with all the combined skill that they have. Right. Well, what a podcast full of surprises. That is all for today's On the Ball, the Norwich City podcast. There's asked for a mustard sponsor for Christmas, as everyone else seems to have got one. Please make sure you subscribe to On the Ball if you haven't already. I mean, if you don't after this one with a surprise appearance from Michael Bailey, then you're never going to. It's free on your usual player. Just search On the Ball Norwich City on your preferred social platform. Ratings and reviews, wherever prompted, are always hugely appreciated. And if you want to get in touch with any questions, direct message me on Twitter at NCFCnumbers. No one ever does, but it's fine. I'm always there. A big thank you then to our remaining guests tonight. Zoe, thank you very much. Thank you for coming dressed for the occasion as well.
No problem with my Craig Bellamy themed Santa hat that I'm wearing, which is very old. Says Jingle Bellamy on it.
Ah, yes. Jingle Bell Amy.
Yeah, Bellamy, yes. that old famous song. Merry Christmas, Steve. It's been a pleasure, as always.
Merry Christmas to you, and thank you for everything in 2023. And Dan, the same to you, of course.
Thank you, pleasure, and also a genuine pleasure to be finishing another year with Norwich unbeaten in the derby as well.
I mean, we couldn't have scripted it better, could we? I was really thinking that we weren't going to be able to say that, but
I don't think we'd have bothered doing the podcast if we'd lost.
It would have just been me here on my own with my crying into my blue lights.
Michael suddenly popping up 20 minutes into your tears.
Yeah, I'm going to need some warning for that next time. And thank you everyone for listening and for sticking with us throughout the year, whether you're listening live or listening back. As I always say, we do really appreciate it. I think our next pod it's definitely going to be in the new year, probably on the 8th of January, after that Bristol Rovers game. The start of a glorious cup run, no doubt. Until then, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and never mind the danger.